Currency Wars. Who introduced us to Currency Wars? Jade. Which faction does Jade belong to? The IPC. And which section in particular? The Ten Stonehearts. Haha, yeah, perfect intro. Yeah, so I want to talk about the other Ten Stonehearts in Honkai Star Rail that we haven't officially met in the story, so I won't be talking much about Topaz, Aventurine, and Jade. Today's focus is on the rest of them. I'll be going over everything we know about them so far, as well as theorizing which paths and elements these characters might be if/when they become playable. For these theories, I will be basing them on my own research and speculations and not leaks, so for anyone worried about leaks, do not worry. And I will be referencing the Myriad Celestia trailer called Stoneheart's Oath Ring, both ends of the scale, quite a bit because that's when we first got glimpses of many of the Stonehearts. So when I refer to the vote regarding Aventurine's future within the Stonehearts, that's what I'm talking about, that trailer in particular. To assist with my theories about the characters' paths, I looked into the symbolism of each gemstone that they are associated with. I know the IPC follows the preservation, so it might be kind of obvious to say that they're all going to be preservation characters, but a character's combat path doesn't always match the path they follow in the lore. As for the order I will be going in, it's certainly an order. I was gonna go in alphabetical order, but then I wanted Diamond to be last because he's the leader, and that seems like a really important person, you know, best for last kind of thing. And the first character I talk about isn't the first alphabetically either, so yeah, this is done in the order I want it to be. Additionally, we don't know all the 10 Stonehearts' genders, so for those who are unknown, I'll be using they/them pronouns, but I might guess if they'll be a man or a woman. With that said, I think it's time to jump into it. The first Stoneheart I want to discuss is Amber. Out of all the Stonehearts I'm talking about today, she's probably one we know the least about, or we just know very little about her, so some of what I'm going to speculate might be a bit of a stretch. Amber's rank in the IPC is unknown. When the 10 Stonehearts voted on whether or not to get rid of Aventurine, Pearl stated that Amber preferred to stay neutral. However, she ended up voting in his favor. Amber isn't really a gemstone, but is actually hardened tree resin. It's yellow-orange in color, which is represented in Amber the Stonehearts' clothes. This gemstone represents a few different things. Some of those include spirits, warmth/the sun, life, healing, protection, cleansing, renewal, and ancient wisdom. I'll be calling this resin the gemstone to differentiate between it and the character, but please know that I'm aware that it's not really a gemstone now. So what paths do I think Amber might be when she becomes playable? My two guesses are abundance or harmony. Abundance because the Amber gemstone is connected to healing, cleansing, and the sun. Traits like that give healer vibes, you know? Especially since one of the traits is literally healing. I'm thinking about harmony as well, though, because of what Pearl said regarding her vote on whether or not Aventurine should stay in the 10 Stonehearts. Amber may have voted in Aventurine's favor, but she really wanted to remain neutral about the whole thing. This desire for neutrality makes me think of harmony, you know, someone who might want to keep the peace. Additionally, the gemstone has the symbolic trait of cleansing. Where abundance characters can cleanse debuffs, I know a lot of harmony characters can as well, especially if they have a turn advancement ability. So that's why I think she could be either of these two paths. As for her element, I suspect imaginary because the color scheme on her clothes is very yellow. Where the color scheme doesn't always equate to a character's element, it's usually a giveaway. So my theory is that Amber will be either abundance or harmony, with her element being imaginary. Agate's rank in the IPC is unknown, and so is their gender. They were, in fact, absent from the meeting regarding Aventurine and asked Obsidian to vote on their behalf. This vote was against Aventurine's, and so was Obsidian's. It's unclear if this is what Agate wanted, but if they trusted Obsidian with their vote, we can speculate that the two of them were on the same page. Additionally, Obsidian mentions that Agate's whereabouts are unknown, and they might actually be dead. The only image we see of Agate shows Xynthia. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I've seen conflicting pronunciations. I'm going with that one though. And Xynthia is a god of wealth in Chinese mythology. This actually makes a lot of sense since money and wealth are inevitably tied to the IPC, specifically the Strategic Investment Department. The gemstone agate can be many different colors, but the color they chose for HSR is red. Agate symbolizes grounding, balance, harmony of yin and yang, protection of evil and natural disasters, and good fortune. Agate's combat path is hard to theorize on. Since their personality and preferences are very much unknown, I'm drawing mostly on the gemstone's symbolism. Because there's a focus on balance and harmony between yin and yang, there's a possibility they could be a harmony character. However, I also think they could be remembrance. Literally, my only reason for this is the image of Xynthia used to depict them. It made me wonder if this wealth deity is their memo sprite for some reason. I don't know why that idea popped into my head, but it did, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. There's another shadow behind Xynthia in the image, and I can't tell who or what it's supposed to be, so that could be the actual memo sprite, or just a glimpse of what Agate truly looks like. I don't don't know. As for their element, because the gemstone and the background of the image are red, I speculate fire. Obsidian is an interesting character in my opinion. We have more info on her right now than the others in the Ten Stonehearts, so that gives me more to work with. Obsidian is rank P46 within the Strategic Investment Department. As you may recall, Obsidian voted on Agate's behalf. Both her vote and Agate's were against adventuring. Obsidian seems to have a sadistic personality, as she once said, "Prey that dies a natural death, what fun is there in that?" From her silhouette in the trailer, we can tell that she has long red hair and pointed ears. Additionally, she enjoys blood red wine. Her pointed ears make me wonder if she's a Videodora or even a vampire due to her connections with blood, or at least the color of blood. In the trailer, there are also bats seen near her, so that also kind of makes me think vampire. During my research regarding the gemstone, I learned the common Chinese name for obsidian translates to dragon crystal. This is another reason why I speculate she's a Videodora. That, or she could be another kind of dragon race within the Honkai Star Rail universe. Obsidian the gemstone can symbolize the following: grounding, clarity of mind, and protection against negativity, emotional harm, and psychic attacks. Because of Obsidian's personality, or the bit we've glimpsed, I get 3 different path vibes for her: nihility, destruction, or hunt. Her statement about prey gives the impression that she has a disregard for life, or at least some lives, which is why I think of nihility. A sadistic nature also gives destruction vibes, so that's why I consider that path. The gemstone's symbolism of protection against various harm means she could have some sort of counter mechanic like what we see with Yunli, another destruction character. Finally, she seems rather decisive about what she wants to do, so hunt could be fitting for her as well. She thinks the Stonehearts are being overly timid about aventuring, meaning she likes swift and bold decisions most likely. Obsidian's element is a bit difficult to theorize. She wears black clothing and her hair is red. Because of her hair color, I'm gonna go ahead and say she'll probably wield the fire element. So to summarize, I think Obsidian's path could be nihility, destruction, or hunt, and her element could be fire. Oh please Hoyo, not another fire nihility 5-star. Opal is rank P46. From what we've seen of him so far, he's a little guy. No, really, he's tiny, probably shorter than me. Not to mention that his cornerstone is a pacifier? Okay, the pacifier looks like an opal, but it's unclear if it's actually his cornerstone. Anyway, because of his smaller stature, I wonder if he's a Pepeshi or some similar race. Just like another race that's short, I don't know. During the meeting to decide Aventuring's fate within the Ten Stonehearts, Opal voted in Aventuring's favor. Additionally, Opal is the one who gave Aventuring the job to Penacony in his stead. So Opal was supposed to be the one to go to Penacony, but he gave that job to Aventuring instead. He didn't trust Aventuring really, but he knew the opportunity was something Aventuring wanted. Because of this, it's hard to tell if Opal was being kind to Aventuring or if he was just giving away responsibility he didn't want. It's difficult to get a grasp on his personality, but we'll definitely learn more about him in the future. Opal the gemstone's symbolism can be royalty, good luck, invisibility, creativity, inspiration, emotional well-being, love, hope, purity, prophecy, and protection. Something you'll notice is that a lot of these gemstones are associated with protection in some way or another, which I find very fitting for a group that follows the preservation. When it comes to Opal's potential paths and elements, that was a lot of P's right close to each other, I don't have as many ideas as I did with Obsidian. I think Opal could be a hunt character in combat, and I say this because he seems like a fairly decisive person, knowing what he wants and how he wants to accomplish it. Again, I don't know a whole lot about his personality, but his decision to send Aventurine to Penacony instead informed my theory. As for his element, I think either physical or imaginary would work for him. Opals tend to reflect many different colors, but I always imagine their like quote-unquote base color to be white, if that makes any sense. So that's why I think he could be physical. His design gives some physical vibes too, but there's a lot of yellow in his color scheme, which is why he could also be imaginary. But like, we also got a closer glimpse of him after I wrote this script, and there's a little bit of purple, so maybe he's lightning? I don't know. We'll get more information soon, won't we? I don't know about y'all, but I already really like Pearl. Even when we didn't have her full design, she seemed like she'd be really pretty and just cool, I guess. Also, some of you may know that my real name is Megan, which actually means Pearl. So yeah, it's kind of fated that I'll pull for her when the time comes. Anyway, Pearl is rank P45 in the Strategic Investment Department, and she's an Intellitron. Pearl is the current CEO of Plain Arcadia. This world was created from a canvas and was made able to communicate with the rest of the cosmos with the IPC's help. She voted in Aventuring's favor, saying that I think you need more justice in your life. It's hard to tell if she was talking broadly to all the Stonehearts or just to Obsidian, who had spoken before her. Pearl is an organic gemstone, which is a little ironic since Pearl of the IPC is an intellitron, or in other words, she's an inorganic being. The Chinese word for pearl can mean true, real, authentic bead, or precious, rare bead. The gemstone symbolism is moon, wealth, purity, wisdom, emotional balance, and feminine energy. So what might Pearl's combat path and element be? In my opinion, she's a little easier to theorize about since more of her personality has been revealed through trailers and other HSR content. Writing this script before playing Arcadia might be a mistake, as I'm guessing she'll be playable within the upcoming version, so I'll make these theories just to be wrong in a few months basically, but hey, I still think it's fun to take a guess. Pearl seems like a fairly kind individual, all things considered. In one of Aventurine's stories, he thinks of her as someone who has little emotion, but that's probably just because she's an intellitron. She voted for Aventurine to stay within the Ten Stonehearts because she felt it was the just thing to do. Now, I'm not sure how this equates to her being kind, but it's just the vibes I get when I hear her say this. Additionally, pearls are associated with purity and authenticity, so I'm guessing that Pearl is someone who either can't lie or most often tells the truth. Because of these traits, or theorized traits, I'm gonna guess that Pearl's path will be abundance. I know not all abundance characters are pure beings who always do the right thing, looking at you, Luocha, but generous and altruistic acts are manifestations of the path of abundance, according to the path description in-game. However, we are going to plan Arcadia, which is introducing the path of elation as playable. I'm also guessing she could be elation. Maybe she's a support character? Or she could be a DPS, hard to say. Honestly, she seems like she'll be elation more so just for meta purposes, so yeah, I don't know. As for her element, I think she'll either be ice or physical. Since pearls have ties with the moon, and the moon has ties with the water, and ice is frozen water, I lean more toward ice, and well, I guess she has quite a bit of blue in her design as well. Well, this is another favorite of mine. We know very little about Sapphire, including their gender. However, by looking at their silhouette here, I kind of suspect they're a male character. The cut just seems masculine, don't ask. Since we don't know for sure though, I'll stick with using they/them pronouns when I talk about them. Sapphire's rank in the Strategic Investment Department is unknown. In that one Myriad Celestia trailer, they voted against Aventurine. Pearl reported their vote, and along with it mentioned that they value oaths more than results. Because Aventurine broke his oath by destroying his cornerstone, Sapphire found that a good enough reason to remove Aventurine from the Ten Stonehearts, even if his decision helped save things in the end. That particular Ten Stonehearts trailer also shows a griffin during Sapphire's part, which I find very fascinating. Griffins are often seen as guardians of wealth and divine knowledge, and they have symbolism related to protection, vigilance, justice, fidelity, courage, and divinity. Griffins can also symbolize the dualities of wisdom and power, and also divinity and humanity. I'm not sure why we see this griffin in the background, but it makes me wonder if Sapphire can shapeshift. That, or it's their pet or something? I don't know. In Chinese, the second character in the word Sapphire can be used to describe strong character traits, so Sapphire might be someone who's stubborn and fiercely loyal. The gemstone is known for its remarkable hardness. Yes, you heard that right. Remarkable hardness. And that's another reason why I think this character is male. But I guess they could be female. Alright, I think I've talked enough about the griffin symbolism, but what can the gemstone symbolize? It can symbolize a third eye for oracles, protection from envy and infidelity, harmony to lovers, peace between adversaries, royalty/nobility, truth, sincerity, faithfulness, and heavenly blessings. Because there are so many mentions of royalty and divinity, maybe Sapphire is some kind of god, or maybe an heir/ruler. That would be cool. Anyway, if they are a dude, I'm already a simp, so... Okay, I think I yapped enough about symbolism and griffins, so it's time for my theories about Sapphire's path and element. If griffins are guardians, Sapphire is a hard stone, and it's often associated with protection. I honestly think they could be a preservation character. There's also a shield in their silhouette, which obviously tells me everything I need to know. Also, there are the two swords, so maybe, like, they use the swords in combat? That could be kinda cool. Crazy that this is the first Stoneheart I suspect will be preservation when playable, but it just makes sense. That being said, a small voice in my head whispers, remembrance. I can't find a definitive these characteristics are associated with the remembrance, but I find myself wondering if the griffin is a memo sprite. Remembrance characters also seem fiercely protective of those they care about, and that seems like a character trait Sapphire would have. Okay, that one may be a bit of a stretch, but having a male remembrance character that is not the Trailblazer would be cool. And I picked Stell, so I don't even have a male remembrance character. When it comes to their element, I'm in between Quantum and Ice. They have a lot of blue in their design, but some of it is very dark blue, and almost purple, which is why I suspect Quantum. And yeah, if we could have a Quantum male character that isn't a collab character, that would be awesome. But, you know, ice characters often have blue in their design, so that's also why I think that could be their element. And, you know, I was saying all that stuff about male characters. Again, we don't know if this character is male, but I'm suspecting they're male. Just to sum up, my theory about Sapphire is that they'll be a preservation or remembrance character, but I lean more toward preservation, who wields either Quantum or ice. So I'm going to be saying Sugilite for this character, but I also acknowledge that some people pronounce it Sugilite or something like that. Apparently the word has Japanese origins though, and there's no soft G in Japanese, so I'm going with Sugilite. Anyway, Sugilite is another member whose rank within the strategic investment department is unknown. During Stoneheart's Oath Ring, both ends of the scale, Sugilite voted against Aventurine, so he was in favor of removing him from the 10 Stonehearts. Sugilite is also seen at a large dinner table full of various foods. This seems like quite a fancy meal, so perhaps he's a rich individual. When casting his vote, he says that Aventurine's unnecessary extravagance was all self-serving, with which Topaz quickly disagrees. I find this a bit ironic as Sugilite himself seems extravagant, but perhaps I'm jumping to conclusions. Although, this whole video is essentially me jumping to conclusions, so let's just talk about the gemstone symbolism. It symbolizes spiritual love, or just love in general, higher consciousness, emotional healing, a shield against negative vibes, and wisdom. Honestly, guessing Sugilite's path isn't easy. All we know about him is that he might be rich and he seems judgmental, but that's not enough to give me a strong feeling about which path he'll be in combat. My guesses here are mostly based on the gemstone symbolism. My first guess is preservation, both for the obvious reason that it's his lore path and because the gemstone has shield symbolism. Another path I speculate he could be is harmony. This is because the gemstone is associated with love and emotional healing. He doesn't seem like a particularly harmonious individual, but we really don't know that much about him at the end of the day, so maybe I should really stop jumping to conclusions about his personality. He could surprise me after all. As for his element, I think he'll be lightning because he's Opal, and that seems as good a reason as any. Yeah. Last, but certainly not least, we have Diamond, the leader and founder of the 10 Stonehearts. And I guess he's technically not a Stoneheart, because there are 10 members excluding him, but he's the leader, so he's in this video anyway. Anyway, he's rank P47, the highest we've seen so far, but I do kind of wonder if there are higher ranked individuals within the strategic investment department. He's been described as having a heart that's unyielding like a monolith, so probably a pretty stubborn individual is my guess. Not only is he the leader of the 10 Stonehearts, but he's also an emanator of preservation. The cornerstones he grants to the Stonehearts store some of the power of the preservation within them. They are considered very valuable, thus why Aventurine was judged so harshly for breaking his, even if he achieved the IPC's goal in the end by doing so. Diamond himself wasn't pleased with Aventurine's actions, but he accepted the result of the meeting because he needs all the 10 Stonehearts' support for the upcoming war between eons. Yeah, there's just some ominous upcoming war between eons that keeps getting mentioned, and now I'm kind of scared for the plot. I have a small theory about the people that Diamond recruits. I think he might purposefully choose people who stand out in some way. From what I can see, all the 10 Stonehearts are quite unique in some way, be it their personalities or appearances. I'm not sure if this is true, but it was interesting for me to think about. Now, what does Diamond the Gemstone symbolize? Diamonds are associated with long life, health, clarity, inner peace, eternal love, a ward against unwanted things, strength, purity, and commitment. Unlike pretty much every other character in this video, I'm fairly confident I can guess Diamond's combat path. He has to be preservation, and I'll be very surprised if he isn't. I mean, he's literally an emanator of preservation, and so far in the game, all the emanators have the same lore path and combat path, like how Hurt is an erudition character and Acheron's an agility character. His element isn't as easy to guess though. We haven't gotten even a glimpse of Diamond yet in the game, so I have no color scheme to go off of. Based purely on the gemstone, I'd say physical, since it's kind of a clear white color. However, I have a suspicion he could be imaginary because that, frankly, also seems fitting. I don't know why. Also, Hoyo seems to love making imaginary characters male, so yeah, that's my other reason. Alright, that's all my theories about the paths and elements of the 10 Stonehearts we have yet to meet in the game. I always like to speculate these aspects of a character before they're released, so this was a fun video for me. I hope it was at least mildly entertaining for all of you. If you can't tell, out of all the characters I talked about today, I'm most looking forward to Sapphire and Pearl. I think Sapphire's part was actually the longest that I wrote, probably because I put more intention into researching stuff about them. Ooh, Ooh, yeah, I'm cooked. Okay. But I'm curious to know if there's a member of the 10 Stonehearts you're most looking forward to meeting. I can see Obsidian potentially being a fan favorite, and Diamond will certainly be fun to learn more about in the future. Also, if you have any more information about the Stonehearts you'd like to share that I didn't mention, feel free to let me know. But that's all I have for this video, so consider liking it and subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed it. Hope to see you in a later video, and bye-bye!